Shane McMahon is famous for his death-defying leaps from dizzying heights. He pulled off more daredevil stunts than anyone else because he craved his father's respect more than anything else.
The only thing I ever wanted is for you to be proud of me.
When you're performing, you want that adulation that you did a good job, especially, from my father.
His father, Vince McMahon, former CEO of WWE, is a father figure for many wrestlers. Everyone strives for his approval. But for Shane, earning that recognition was an especially tough, uphill battle.
I don't know there aren't many pats on the shoulder and the way to go. Maybe there should have been, My dad, he never said it to me, and that's okay.
This documentary peeks behind the curtain of the enigmatic McMahon family. From love to lies, family feuds, infidelity, and radio silence. We explain Shane's life-threatening matches, backstage bullying, his ongoing conflict with Triple H, and his sad fate, the lifelong chase for his father's approval.
Describe Vince McMahon. That would be really very tough to do. Let's see. Egomaniac, physical culturist, someone who needs to be challenged every day, sexually active, psychologically challenged.
Vince McMahon is one of the most controversial figures in today's media landscape. To some, he's a wrestling genius. To others, a detestable criminal. Growing up as a McMahon was anything but easy for Shane and Stephanie.
WWE has always been polarizing, and when I was growing up, some people would love me just because of who my father was, and some people would not give me the time of day because of who my father was.
From the outside, the McMahons long appeared to be a harmonious family. However, they always made an effort to conceal the true nature of their private relationships. Mother Linda and Father Vince were deeply involved in the wrestling business, a family enterprise that forced Vince to neglect his family.
My dad was gone a lot. So like any child, all you really want is your father to be there. Yeah. So I missed him. I missed him a lot. So it was difficult growing up, because he was on the road quite a lot.
Shane learned early on that work was his father's top priority. He lived for the business. The only way to spend time with him on a regular basis was to travel to the shows on weekends. That's how Shane and Steph grew up in the colorful world of pro wrestling.
Being Vince McMahon's son, I grew up in a very interesting world.
It was just the most exciting thing to be a part of, and I could feel that as a kid. Growing up, it was larger than life.
The backstage area in wrestling is no place for children. Vulgarity, drug use, big egos, and escalating conflicts were part of everyday life. Linda tried to shield Stephanie from it all. She largely succeeded. The wrestlers adored her and complimented her on how cute she was. For Shane, it was different. He didn't want to be sheltered. He craved adventure and always pushed the envelope. Vince regularly caught Shane drinking alcohol with other wrestlers' kids. He was only 12 years old at the time. Shane also struggled with his mental health. He was hyperactive and couldn't concentrate for long. Doctors diagnosed him with ADHD and prescribed medication. But Shane didn't take it. Shane's high energy often caused him problems. As a teenager, he got on people's nerves. Some wrestlers started bullying him. It was a part of the culture at the time. Younger, weaker men had it rough backstage. Shane said on the Steve Austin show that a group of wrestlers regularly put his gym bag in the shower or forced him into a locker.
The boys would blow cigarette smoke in there, or cigar smoke, or whatever else they were doing, and just bang on the locker.
Despite this, Shane looked up to the wrestlers. They were like real-life superheroes to him. because Shane is a wrestling fan. But unlike all the kids in the arena, Shane didn't have to buy a ticket. He could meet his idols face to face and talk to them. That's when he decided he wanted to be like them. Strong, heroic, daring, and bold. Impressive athletes, but above all, they mattered to his father. Shane saw how important big wrestling stars like Hulk Hogan were to Vince. But wrestling veterans shrugged him off. To them, he was the boss's spoiled kid. Shane hated to be seen that way. He wanted to be treated with respect.
How important was it to have the respect of the boys in the dressing room?
Extremely. And that was since I've been around the locker room. Again, growing up in the locker room, you always wanted the respect of the boys. And whether that's going to get some of those guys coffee, keeping your mouth shut, taking ribs, not stooging anybody off.
Shane knew if he wanted to earn his father's recognition and that of the locker room, he had to make a name for himself in the business. A business that can be fun, colorful, but also dark. Of course, that didn't stop him.
I always wanted to be in the business, and the business of the business specifically. I started at a very early age. I would sweep the ring. I remember being in the audience, I remember being backstage, was all over the place, just soaking it all in.
His first jobs were unspectacular. As a teenager, Shane was part of the ring crew. His only task was to take wrestlers' jackets after their entrance and make sure they are hung up in the right locker rooms. Shane got no pay. Instead, he was allowed access to creative meetings where storylines were planned. Shane said in interviews that he will never forget the heated discussions between his father and the members of the creative team. At 16, Shane started working as a broadcast producer behind the scenes. Here, he worked directly with his father, who was an announcer at the time. They often found themselves at odds.
Keep it going. We're gonna die on you. We're gonna die on you.
Shane interrupted his father mid-sentence when he felt Vince wasn't putting enough energy into the performance, or if he stressed the wrong word. To no one's surprise, Vince wasn't too thrilled about these corrections. Vince tried to manage Shane. All the while, Shane was managing him.
With what? What are you gonna do here? Shane's in my light. If you stand up, you're in my light, Shane.
There were more and more conflicts between them. Shane constantly challenged Vince. Bruce Pritchard, a longtime confidant of Vince, spoke about it on various podcasts. For example, Shane wanted to get his ear pierced, but Vince forbade it. When Shane came home with an earring anyway, Vince lost it.
He's trying to get Vince's attention, so Vince reaches up, grabs the earring like he's going to rip it out of his ear, but it's a clip-on, which infuriates Vince all the more, and kind of offered to pierce his ear right there for him, and Linda pleaded for him not to.
In another situation, Shane pushed his father into a pool. Turning red with embarrassment and then with anger, Vince reportedly chased his son in a fit. One time, sharing a car with Vince and Pritchard, Shane is said to have raced at over 125 miles an hour. Vince ordered him to slow down. In response, Shane switched onto the slow lane and said from now on, he was Mr. Safety. He'd never go over 45 ever again. Vince sighed and Shane putted along terribly slowly for an hour, just to annoy his father. Shane eventually stepped into the limelight and started becoming an active part of the shows during the Attitude Era, when wrestling was at its most popular. He was assigned the on-screen role of Vince's son. His sister Stephanie was also included in the storylines.
The kids ended up being very, very popular performers, super popular.
Whose tanned, well-toned body supersedes that of a normal 60-year-old, whose mighty grapefruits produce the life-giving semen that spawned me. This is getting weird.
For Shane, it was a dream come true. He discovered his inner showman and relished the spotlight.
So I love it, getting the ability to go do something I've always wanted to do since I was very little.
In his TV appearances, all of Shane's cravings were satisfied. The rush of adrenaline, the chance to prove himself, and above all, a few minutes of his father's undivided attention.
And you start earning your stripes.
Shane and Mr. McMahon.
Shane became part of Steve Austin's feud against Vince McMahon. He took more and more bumps. Eventually, he had his first wrestling match. He didn't have a lot of training, but the fans loved him. They wanted to see him on the big screen, and Shane wanted to prove himself.
You know, obviously when you're performing, you want that adulation that you did a good job, especially, you know, from my father. And I think that's why I've always just tried to do a little bit extra, you know, in the ring.
Shane tried hard to earn the respect of his colleagues, but the veterans gave him a hard time. They bullied him, said he was untalented. They laughed at his matches and said what he was doing in the ring wasn't even wrestling. Cynicism ran rampant in the roster of the early 2000s. Resentment and envy split the locker room into opposing camps. Mutual appreciation or expressions of respect were rare, but Shane knew what to do.
He picked me up and suplexed me. I was supposed to go through that glass. I hit that glass, it was like, boom, and I went straight down on my noggin.
His head kept hitting the concrete. I could hear it. And I was like, Shane, we gotta move on. He's like, no, throw me through the effing glass. It was supposed to be sugar glass and it was plexiglass. So we were going through real glass.
Shane's match against Kurt Angle had huge implications for his standing and his career. The boss's son proved himself outside of the gilded cage, in pain, risk, and injury.
I felt for Shane that night. He took it like a champ, just trying to prove something to his dad.
Shane took the pain and soldiered on. He got himself injured in an effort to entertain the crowd. This match was a milestone for Shane. When he returned backstage, the other wrestlers greeted him with a standing ovation. He had earned the respect of the WWE stars. It was a tough road to get there.
Because they're the most cynical guys ever, you know, as you're well aware. But to have that respect truly is something that I never forget and stuck with me.
Shane and Angle had to go to the hospital after the match, but both were still high on adrenaline, overjoyed at the success of their performance.
We were so stupid. We're in the hospital high-fiving each other. We're both crippled. And I'm looking back today and I'm like, we were so dumb.
Concussions, injuries, life-threatening situations. Shane gave his all to earn the respect of his co-workers. But even more than the wrestler's respect, he needed that of his father.
His expectations are extremely high. You know, every once in a while, someone wants at least one pat on the shoulder. Be like, good job. That doesn't come.
Didn't come?
Very rarely.
Rarely, really?
Very rarely.
Oh.
Vince McMahon has one principle in life. Work comes first. He learned that from his father. The business always came first. For a long time, Vincent Kennedy McMahon had no father. He had a terrible childhood.
My childhood was what it was. It was difficult.
The physical abuse that he suffered at the hands of his stepfather and alluded to sexual abuse that he implied was at the hands of his mother.
There's fighting, there's infighting, there's incest, and you don't like it. But I felt that as a kid when you're getting the crap beat out of you, once he stops, if you're still breathing, you're still living, you win.
No money, no drive. The young Vince McMahon, then known as Vinnie Lupton, stole cars and brought them back later. Looking back, he says, he does not regret it. He sold homemade liquor and somehow made ends meet. Above all, he was afraid of home, of domestic violence. Vince's rough childhood permanently shaped his personality. Deeply hurt from violence and trauma, he was determined to make himself invulnerable through money, power, and success.
The great success that has been enjoyed by Vincent Kennedy McMahon
was driven by the overcompensatory behavior, rebelling against the first miserable 12 years of his life. And escaping that abuse has been his life pursuit in creating an atmosphere in which he is untouchable and invulnerable to outside forces and in control of his own destiny.
Vince escaped his violent mother and left home. He only met his father as a teenager. Vince Sr. was running a successful wrestling promotion. They shared a polite but distant business relationship. The only time Vince felt his dad's affection was when he did something to help the business. It was less about fatherly love and more about professional respect. Young Vince could make his father proud by taking on important work and mastering the challenges of the wrestling business. He helped where he could. That way, he developed a thorough understanding of the business. Vince sacrificed all his time for his father's promotion, just to hear the words, "You did well, I'm proud of you." It's safe to assume that Vince associated his father's recognition with hard work and professional success. Vince associates work not only with money and power, but with recognition, respect, and familial love. Vince replaced his father as head of the company, but became less emotionally available the more successful he became. His business philosophy put him into an untouchable position of power. Vince McMahon pulled all the strings. He had final say in what storylines made it to television. And he had a penchant for realism.
Vince was a master of blurring storylines. He would twist something that started out with a piece of reality and then just take it step by step into a place where you didn't know what to believe and what you didn't believe.
Vince created a blatant television version of his real personality, Mr. McMahon, the evil boss, as a TV character. He acted ruthlessly, humiliated employees, and saw attractive women as objects to possess. On air, in front of millions of people, Mr. McMahon cheated on his wife Linda. This too was based in reality.
Do you remember in 2001 you did that Playboy interview?
Yes, right.
And you talked in that one about different affairs. I was curious why you would even go there in that article.
In that article, I just felt like I was very straightforward. I wasn't playing a character then. It was like a very straightforward, honest reaction to the questions that were asked.
When Shane heard about the Playboy interview, he reportedly didn't speak to his father for a while. Shane was outraged that his father had been unfaithful, but above all, he found it disrespectful that he told the media about it in detail. Shane was strictly opposed to the idea of the infidelity storyline. He asked his father to keep his mother out of it, but Vince went through with it.
If anything is mentioned about my mom, usually my first reaction is no. My mom's kind of sacred to me, so I didn't quite like that one.
Shane said he was a little bit...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Shane is a bit more conservative than the rest of us, so Shane may have had a little bit of a problem with that, because he sometimes, wait a minute, is you getting too close to real now? I'm thinking, this is a storyline, it's characters, entertaining the audience, just go with it.
Vince responded to Shane's protests against the storyline, but not as Shane had hoped. Vince simply included his son in the rivalry.
The audience loves it when it looks like it's real. And sometimes it is real. These are real-life McMahons.
The feud's climax was a match between Vince and Shane at WrestleMania 17.
Son versus father.
I had to stand up for the abuse that was going on with my mom. I just couldn't take it anymore, which would be accurate.
Two wrestlers who weren't really wrestlers at all. Before the match, Shane was extremely nervous.
I was so nervous going into that match because I've never raised a hand to my father. It's always been one way,
I asked Shane to strike me, and I can't do it. Slap me, you can do that. No, I can't. I can slap you.
Bell rings. My dad hits me with about 4 shots in the face right off the bat. And I was like, boom, bam, and my eyes swelled up, immediately. I was like, well, this may be a little easier than I thought.
And you build up the tension, you build up these characters, and then you have a resolution of that story. Oh, it feels so good.
When Shane walked back through the curtain after the match, some colleagues complimented him, but his father's appreciation was nowhere to be found. Vince wasn't satisfied with some of the details in the match. Shane still hoped for praise for his performance, but in vain. Vince had the highest expectations for his children, especially Shane.
Would you say your dad was tough on you growing up?
My dad was definitely tough on me growing up. Still is to this day.
I was harder on my kids in the business than anybody else. I guess it's because I wanted to be better than everybody else. And their last name is McMahon, so step the hell up.
He was certainly easier on me than Shane, for sure. But I didn't challenge him the same way my brother did. I think there's a unique relationship there with fathers and sons.
Father and son.
Shane couldn't please his father, although he tried so hard, over and over again. It was never enough. He expressed exactly that in a promo. Again, a scripted segment with truth at its core. For Shane, this is reality. There's a pain in his voice that betrays him.
The only thing I ever wanted from you, the only thing I ever wanted is for you to be proud of me! Of me! But I finally figured it out. That's never ever gonna happen. Because it's never been about me. It's always been about you. You, Dad!
Vince had both a personal and a professional relationship with his children. But since 95% of his life revolved around business, he only ever fed the professional relationship. So that is all that remained.
He expects results. He demands results, especially from his family.
He was tough on him when Shane and Stephanie were pitching ideas. He'd flat out reject them. He'd flat out say they sucked. He wants to hold them to a higher standard.
Vince McMahon has had one truly monogamous relationship in his entire life, and that's with the business that he built. That's his passion. That's his love. That's his master. Vince doesn't own the business. This business owns Vince McMahon. And if that hurts his wife's feelings, Stephanie's feelings, Shane's feelings, or his own feelings, those people be damned.
Shane had been trying so hard to earn his father's appreciation by playing his role on screen. But when that didn't work, he tried something else. He aimed to impress Vince on a business level. Shane worked to establish himself as a worthy representative of the company. In interviews, he portrayed himself as a business executive.
Well, I think we have a really good mix, and that's why our product is, in my view, second to none.
The daredevil stuntman turned corporate. Shane had one goal. He wanted to work his way up to eventually replace his father and become the CEO of WWE himself.
Shane absolutely wanted to be the next McMahon, and he always figured he would be.
Did I envision myself being next in line to do certain things? Sure, from the standpoint of I just want to continue the family business.
Shane became more and more of a creative entrepreneur. Many of WWE's good business decisions can be traced back to Shane McMahon. He was partly responsible for building their huge internet presence and generating interest on social media. Early on, he had the idea for cinematic matches. NXT was his idea too. It later blossomed under Triple H's leadership. Shane had many good ideas, but rarely got the appreciation he deserved. Much unlike Triple H.
Time to play the game.
What the hell kind of family did I marry into?
Time to play the game.
You guys have got to be the head
of the most dysfunctional family on the planet.
Shane McMahon and Triple H don't get along. In public, they tried to downplay their differences, but it's now an open secret. Shane can't stand Triple H.
My relationship with Paul?
Yeah.
It makes my sister happy, and I'm very happy he does that.
Sounds evasive.
Not evasive.
The conflict between the two has many causes. It all started when Triple H started dating Shane's sister, Stephanie. Before they got together, Steph said in an interview that a relationship with a wrestler wouldn't be good for business.
If you're asking if I would ever date a wrestler, certainly I would. However, it wouldn't be good business for me to get romantically involved with anyone in any aspect of our business.
Vince put Triple H and Steph in a controversial storyline together.
His line is, and Vince, it's not a question of if, but how many times.
Consummate the marriage!
My God, I cannot believe that.
The two worked closely together, and thus they spent a lot of time together.
The McMahon-Helmsley era.
That's where I'm with her every day. And that's how we get to know each other, really.
Shane suspected there was something brewing between Triple H and Stephanie. When he confronted his sister about it, she denied it. However, shortly after, Triple H and Chyna, his then girlfriend, had a very public falling out. Chyna found out he was cheating on her with Stephanie and told everyone about it backstage. The media quickly picked up on the topic, and everyone was talking about Shane's little sister's love life.
And I found a love letter from Stephanie that had dated a year back. When I found out, I was devastated, especially when it's with the boss's daughter.
Shane was disappointed that Stephanie and Triple H had lied to him, that they kept their relationship hidden until Shane found out through rumors and media reports, not from his sister herself.
The thing that didn't sit well with me is it was kept from me for a while. So that didn't feel good.
I would even lead and say, Steph, you need to find somebody, a real man, someone like Triple H.
And then my brother would say, not Triple H. And my dad would go, oh yeah, no, of course, not Triple H, but a guy just like him.
During this time, Shane felt hurt by both his father and his sister. He only maintained a good connection with his mother. His wife backed him through this time and gave him support. 4 years earlier, Shane had married his high school sweetheart Marissa. It was a private ceremony. When Stephanie and Triple H announced their marriage plans, Shane protested.
Shane was very much against it, vehemently so.
Storylines 101, don't date the boss's daughter.
To me, it made sense for Stephanie to date and marry someone like Paul.
But there is one more level to the conflict between Shane and Triple H. Over the years, Triple H and Vince had become friends, and Triple H got many pats on the back.
Paul is a wonderful human being. He and I were friends.
Triple H was well respected in the locker room. He proved himself with creative story ideas and as a businessman. His ideas often found backing. Triple H earned McMahon's trust and recognition, something that Shane had spent his whole life trying to achieve. Next to his father's new son-in-law, Shane felt overlooked. Shane still worked hard in his areas of responsibility, but for his father, it was never enough. Eventually, all the tension came to a head. Shane had a big business idea, but he needed his father's support to make it happen.
The UFC, they got into some financial problems and came to us and said, would you like to purchase, the UFC? I go, this is cool. Well, I said, Dad, let's just go for this one.
Vince didn't like UFC's business model. WWE is scripted entertainment. UFC is combat sports. Vince's argument was as follows: WWE creates characters that are supposed to bring in money for a long time, whereas UFC fighters are profitable much more short-term. After a big loss or an injury, a fighter's financial drawing power is often gone. Shane remained convinced of the idea. He desperately wanted the deal, but Vince stood in the way.
Shane really thought, that's the way to go. So if that's the way to go, Shane, you take your money and put it in, which didn't work.
Their arguments stretched on for weeks. Colleagues sometimes overheard them arguing. Paul Heyman speaks about a fierce confrontation sitting at the same table with them.
Shane had an idea that he really believed in, and Vince totally disagreed with it. And with most things that happen with Vince, once they start to escalate, they escalate really fast. And Vince finally turned to Shane and he said, "Not while I'm alive." And Vince, who was eating something, took his knife and handed it to Shane. And he says, "Right there. Come on, right there. If you want this so bad, stick the dagger right here. Because that's what you're gonna have to do to make that decision. And if you don't stick the dagger right here, then I'll know you're not man enough to do it. And I have to take that into consideration as well. Or you can buy me out the way I bought out my father. And if I don't get out of your way, be prepared to get rid of me the way I would have had to get rid of my father when he wasn't doing things my way at all."
In the end, the big boss, Vince, had the last word. As always, he pulled all the strings. For Shane, this was the straw that broke the camel's back. He felt that his father didn't trust him when it came to really important business decisions. In interviews, Vince said that he didn't think Shane could successfully run a business. The conflicts left their mark, and Shane could no longer work with his father. He left WWE.
It was a really hard decision for me to leave the only thing that I love and the only business I ever wanted to work in my life. But my dad, especially then, was strong at the helm.
But the reason why Shane left, Shane wanted to take the chair, so to speak, and thought it was time for me to leave. But it wasn't his company, it was mine. It's so difficult for family business. Damn, that's difficult.
In an interview, Shane tells Mick Foley how Vince reacted to his departure. He was shocked and hurt. Vince's perspective on life is different. For Vince, the business is his life. When his son leaves the business behind, it's almost like his son is leaving his life.
Shane, what are you doing? I would advise anyone, don't bring your family into the business. It's brutal. It's somewhere along the line it's going to explode.
You never cared about me. I couldn't do anything right for you. Nothing is ever right. My business deals, no matter how much money I made you, was never good enough for you.
After Shane's departure, Triple H became even more powerful. He developed into a respected leader behind the curtain, just like Vince. He was significantly involved in NXT, something Shane would have liked to do, but Triple H was more of a leader type.
You bastards. I said push the main roster. I said make it difficult for it. I didn't say make it impossible for us. Holy cow.
Stephanie and Triple H now took on the responsibilities that in his father's eyes, Shane had failed to earn.
Stephanie McMahon had been a television character for a long, long time. But behind the scenes, she became kind of like a public face of the company, chief brand officer. Paul Levesque, Triple H, was getting more and more influence on the creative side, helping Vince, kind of like number two.
And where was Shane at that point?
Shane was kind of out.
Shane's dream of succeeding his father in the family business burst. Vince clearly chose Triple H for that role.
It was almost like we were opposed on everything, and we grew apart.
He was a little bit of the black sheep of the family, and I never knew what the actual story was behind what happened with his relationship with his dad.
We just weren't seeing eye to eye on certain things. But he's the boss, and when he says we're painting something blue, we're painting it blue.
Now that Shane was no longer part of his father's company, he wanted to build something of his own. He became an entrepreneur. As CEO of You On Demand, he launched an innovative streaming service, long before the likes of Netflix. He shrewdly invested in new business models and can be considered somewhat of a visionary.
Multiple businesses. Some worked really well, and others just like, okay, it worked okay.
But work wasn't number one on his agenda. Above all, he prioritized spending time with his family.
Yeah, my son and my wife, for that matter, Marissa, that's it for me. That is the nucleus of my life.
Occasionally, Shane met Vince and Stephanie at family gatherings. The business aspect was now largely excluded, but the family relationship remained strained. He reconciled with Stephanie, who felt awful about the situation. She saw how hard it was for Shane to accept that Triple H and Vince were going to run the company and not him. Stephanie loves all three of them: her husband Triple H, her father Vince, and her brother Shane. The conflicts that drove them apart were a great psychological burden for her. Meanwhile, Vince continued working. At WWE, he is considered a mentor, more than that even.
You hear people say this a lot in our business about Vince, like, he was almost like a father to me.
He was like a father figure to me.
He's had the role in my life of a father figure.
I have a father-son relationship with Vince.
In interviews, Bruce Pritchard, Booker T, and Mick Foley said they could never quite understand why Vince showed so much father-like appreciation to his top stars, but rarely to his own son.
Vince is the father figure of the company. All the stars in WWE are desperate for Vince's approval, including his own kid.
I can only imagine being the son of Vince McMahon. It seemed like Shane was always trying to prove something to his dad, all the time. Even if it meant doing some of the most death-defying, feats we've seen in this business.
So 2016, I was gone 6 or 7 years at that point, and got a call. It's my dad. He says, hey, I have an idea.
February 22nd, 2016 was a big day for WWE. Shane McMahon returned and blew the roof off the arena.
Here comes the money.
I get a little choked up about it because to be appreciated like that is something I'll never forget. I'll never forget that night in Detroit. I mean, it was electric. It was special.
This fan reaction meant a lot to Shane.
I'm getting goosebumps under my jacket right now thinking about it. It was so rewarding to have an adulation that long and that loud. When you return to something you love. I see my dad looking at me, and then he has pride. I could see it in his eyes. Now I'm getting choked up looking at that. My sister, she's starting to tear up because, again, we're all back together. It was a huge moment. Eventually what came out was something really cool.
The story they told once again was inspired by real life. The segment set up a big match at WrestleMania 32. 15 years after the father versus son match, Shane versus Vince, Shane once again faced his father, but Vince recruited The Undertaker to represent him. Shane and Taker got along great because they trusted and respected each other. Everything was set for the big showdown.
My adrenaline's peaking right now. About 3 hours from now, something like that. With my head out there, so I'm excited.
Unlike his father, Shane is a family man. Anyone can see that.
The greatest thing was my boys were backstage and was like, you guys want to come out with me?
Yeah, look who's out here with Shane O'Mac.
My boys were doing my stuff and they're doing the arm twist. I go, look at these little dudes. And then I have to snap out of this because I'm about to throw her down with one of the best of them ever.
In the match, Shane pulled off arguably the most iconic stunt in his career, the leap from the roof of the cell. It was extremely dangerous, life-threatening, The Undertaker was strictly against the spot and suggested they do something else, but Shane stuck to his guns. He took the fall. Shane bruised a few ribs, but was otherwise uninjured. The jump from the cage at WrestleMania 32 was another attempt at earning the appreciation of his family, especially his father. And this time, it worked.
I got a hug that night. I got a pat on the back and a hug. Yeah. Got that one.
Those are hard to come by.
Very. Had to earn that one. Guess I did.
Shane got emotional and said, "That's all I ever wanted was your respect." So that was a very personal moment.
Shane rarely felt such warmth from his father. Nothing in the world could have been a better reward.
Both of us were, crying, holding each other in an embrace.
I know that he's always wanted me to respect him and things of that nature. And he did some crazy, crazy things that no one else would do. But I've always been proud of Shane for what he's done, what he attempts to do, because he gives it his all.
I do some risky things. And of course, always looking for that pat on the back from my dad.
Vince and Shane's relationship improved greatly in 2016. In the years following, Shane enjoyed working for his father again. He repeatedly stepped into the ring but also worked as a producer, meaning he planned and supervised matches. Shane produced the Firefly Funhouse match between Bray Wyatt and John Cena. Over 15 years ago, he got the idea to do cinematic matches. Now he got to put his plans into practice. In 2022, Vince McMahon's seemingly endless reign over the WWE empire came to an end. Vince has been accused of sexual abuse, rape, and human trafficking. In Shane's eyes, these are all lies, blown out of proportion by the media. Since then, Shane has focused on his family. His sons like to tease him, just as he once did with his father.
If I mess up on anything, I hear it. So they are my greatest advocates and toughest critics.
Shane's oldest son, Declan McMahon, is now 20 years old. On social media, wrestling fans leave comments saying that he looks like Vince when he was younger. Shane and Triple H still share a rocky relationship, but Declan likes spending time with his uncle. Declan plays college football, but he's flirting with a career in wrestling. His younger brothers are also successful athletes, and all of them can imagine a career in wrestling.
The WWE, as you know, it's all about the storyline, right? Story can get behind it, but who knows? Maybe you could have a bloodline storyline with us. So you really never know. The possibilities are endless.
Unlike Shane, Shane's sons don't have to earn their father's appreciation. According to Declan, they are loved unconditionally, independently of what they may or may not achieve in their career.
Got me.